Okay. Here we go again. Get my leg around here. Put my foot on this thing here so it doesn't waggle. Okay. Hello, I'm Lou Green, and we're at the Green Goddess Studios in Tampa, Florida. I'm with Sharon Calvert, the co-founder of the Tampa Tea Party. Oh, she'll kill me.
Why?
I didn't mention the Central Valley Hornet.
Oh, wait, start over.
She'll sting me.
Yeah, that's right. You have a hornet bite.
Start over. Hello, I'm Lou Green. I'm at the Green Goddess Studios in, no, I'm going to say we're. It could be just me. She'll get me on that one too. Okay. Hello, I'm Lou Green, and we're at the Green Goddess Studios in Tampa, Florida, reporting for the Central Valley Hornet. I have as our guest Sharon Calvert, the co-founder of the Tampa Tea Party and a citizen activist who knows a lot and does a lot and has performed some miracles down here in Tampa, Florida. So welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you, Lou. Glad to be back.
Great to have you. Now, talk to me.
Well, you made it sound right that we have too many issues that we can all deal with, but we'll take them one by one. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues that I think the whole nation's looking at, all the states, but we're looking at closely here in Florida is Common Core.
That's kind of a hot button these days, isn't it?
It is a hot button. All the states, so many of them, saw free money coming at them from Race to the Top, yes, under the Obama administration and the Bill Gates Foundation. And that was a few years ago, unfortunately, when the downturn was, and I think everybody was scrambling for the dollars. But nobody was really looking at what this curriculum is and was, and who developed it. And in the state of Florida, they really don't even know what the cost is. But my concern, and I think the concerns of many parents and teachers and taxpayers now, is that it appears that it empowers the federal government and the Department of Education rather than keeping our education local, which is what needs to happen, and that was always the intent of our founding fathers, and having control over education because our children are our future. Well,
and they're also the people's children at home, and they know more about their kids than the feds do, and they create a one-size-fits-all situation. And how does that actually serve the people? It doesn't. It kind of dumbs down the system.
That's exactly right. And while they, we've had standard tests and standardization, this is really a one-size-fits-all. But the other point that the public needs to understand is the amount of information that will be shared with the federal government. And since we've recently witnessed, abuse of power by the IRS against individuals and groups, the phone call, the NSA surveillance, I think parents should be very, very concerned about providing so much private information to a huge database up in D.C. at the Department of Education.
Well, there's a lot of thinking in certain corridors about, are the kids really their parents' kids, or are the kids property of the U.S. government?
Well, sometimes you wonder about that, because Obama wants to implement pre-K into the public schools. When I grew up, actually, and I went to school in the state of Florida, we didn't have kindergarten. I went to kindergarten, a private kindergarten, but we didn't have that, as part of the public school system. You started in first grade.
We didn't have kindergarten. I started in first grade.
And it seems like the education system was fine because, again, the first teachers are parents.
Yeah, that's correct.
And now, if you go with a one-size-fits-all curriculum and then you start implementing this at age 3, I think that should be a very huge concern, as well as what will the cost be.
Well, it's not only the cost, but when you take a 3-year-old and the indoctrination begins Where does it end?
Right, 3-year-old through the university, right?
That's
and then
right.
they come out and they don't know anything else.
Well, I looked into some of the Common Core issues, and it was more geared toward indoctrination versus education.
Absolutely, they change what you study in history.
Yeah.
You know, history isn't starting back in our founding with the principles of the creation and the start of our country. It basically is starting like after the Civil War. I mean, this is crazy. And that's one thing that's lacking today, is that there are so many children and so many students that are graduating from our high school that really don't understand our history. Because unfortunately the media is out there and portrays a lot of the bad. I mean, it's America, the bad things that have occurred.
And of course there's bad things that occurred, but and this country has always been able to right the ship.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of America, is that we have a form of government that we can right our wrongs. But the founding of our nation has got to be understood by our future generations, or else we will lose the country that we grew up in.
Well, this is why there's about, I think the numbers, I might be off by a little bit, about 2.5 million kids are being homeschooled today.
That's the growing,
for many reasons.
That is right, and a lot of that, I think, is the rejection of the public school system, and that's the largest growing segment of the education population. But unfortunately,
Common Core is trying to rein that in, I believe.
Common Core would affect all students in the state of Florida. It doesn't matter if you're in a public school, you're in a private school, you're in a charter school, or you're homeschooled, because what's going to happen is all of the testing will be geared towards that curriculum.
So that they're teaching toward the test, they're not teaching the kids to learn.
That is exactly right. We've experienced that over the number of decades, and look what we've gotten for it. I mean, we haven't seen the raise in education standards that we're all promised. Again, the local level is where education belongs. That's where it needs to be. The local level is where the curriculums need to be decided, and the textbooks and all, because Common Core dictates a lot of that information. And we're even finding that teachers' unions, some of the teachers' unions are coming out against Common Core, because think of it, it does take their power away as well.
Oh, sure. Now they're being told
what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
My fear is, and I felt this way with Obamacare too, with doctors leaving the industry, my fear is that good teachers are going to leave. And that's exactly what we don't want.
No. A good teacher is worth their weight in gold, and but a good teacher can also be limited by some of the
bureaucracy. Right,
policies.
That's exactly right. And I think it's unfortunate today that the money should go to the classroom. To the teachers. But unfortunately today we've grown our administration with leaps and bounds at every level of our education system.
How big is the Board of Education building in Tampa?
And it seems like every county, right? They take the taxpayer money and they build the mausoleum to the school board and the administrators. And it's really unfortunate, because my brother and my sister-in-law are both teachers. And it's unfortunate that today, if you want to, get a higher salary, you go into administration. So some of the good teachers leave the classroom to go perhaps to be promoted, but they have to go into the administration.
Right.
And that's wrong. So, we just saw recently that our state legislature approved a raise for teachers, and I'm glad that they just didn't do it across the board, because I don't think giving bad teachers a raise is the right message either. But I do agree that good teachers should get a raise and should be paid fairly. But what I would have liked to have seen is that administration gets cut. Cut out some of that bureaucracy and put those dollars back into the classroom.
Right. What would be missed?
Probably if we did do that, nobody would miss much.
That's right.
My mother retired from the Orange County school system, and she was working in an area. She was actually the secretary for the director of the social programs, and she just was amazed that, you know, how much money was being spent on programs that had nothing to do with the classroom and the actual educating of our children. It's an unfortunate thing. But that's sort of the direction that you go when you become the nanny state, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, speaking of the nanny state, I spoke with my daughter-in-law, and she has 4 children, and they live in Germany. And I said, why don't you homeschool the kids? She said, in Germany, if you homeschool the kids, they'll take the kids away and put me in jail. I said, well, that's a great policy. When did that come in? It came in around 1936, and when the German government decided it was a great thing to indoctrinate all the children their own way. And the problem is it's still on the books. It's one of these laws they never took off the books because nobody wants to give up control.
Yeah, that's right, and that's one thing we've been fortunate that we haven't had that kind of policies, but you can see the direction of this. Even if you're homeschooled and you have to follow a bad curriculum, it's sort of the same thing because it doesn't matter where you're being educated.
Yeah, I mean, it's teaching to the test instead of teaching how to learn.
Right, and it's interesting too with the math with what they're doing, because a math problem, you're taught there's different ways to solve a single math problem, right? But they're forcing a single way of answering a problem, and I think that's wrong.
Well,
we all learn differently.
Yeah, go into a store and if the bill is $11.73, give them $12 and then give them 3 cents because you don't want the other pennies back, and watch the guy scratch his head for a while and try to figure out what to do.
Well, that is true. Unfortunately, we do rely on computers today, right?
Well, now they just press the little red button and it tells them exactly what to give them.
That's right.
They figured that one out. That's for a reason.
Well, that's true. But, you know, with Common Core, that's interesting you bring that up, is cursive writing. In cursive writing, it's very individualistic.
Yes.
And Common Core kind of gets away from learning to cursive write. That's an interesting aspect that I think a lot of people don't realize. And yes, we do. Today, unfortunately, the use and reliance on the computers, I think, you know, the penmanship, the ability to make complete sentences,
punctuation, capitals at the beginning. Yeah.
Yes, all those things. I think they're getting lost because I see, even in the business world, you know, I can see a difference in from an email to a formal letter to a memo. Just sometimes the punctuation and the verbiage, you can see that they weren't taught what I was taught when they were very strict about those things, and you learned it, and you had years of it.
Oh yeah. Well, we had penmanship. You had the 3 lines, and you had to, you know, the little ones, the big ones, and you know, all this kind of stuff, and making circles and
right. You learned it. Yeah. And one of my daughters, I was fortunate enough for both of my kids to go to some private school in the early years, and one of the schools my oldest went to, they had to take Latin. And I think to this day she's a good speller, she's a good writer, and she's always been a very big reader. And I think, you know, when you're at that age, this was in elementary school, and since Latin's the foundation of most languages, or all languages. You know, those are the things that we should be having in our school.
Of course.
The basics.
But if you brought that up today, they'd say, you can't do that to the kids. That's too hard.
Well, they would rather have...
They'd flunk self-esteem.
Exactly. I was going to say, they'd have to say, no, we have to have the class on self-esteem. And they don't realize that you have to... you earn self-esteem. You don't learn self-esteem.
Right. Well, you know, it's amazing that if somebody in a school system, a very good teacher, really starts to push the kids, they're reined back in.
Well, that's exactly right. And what I found just in my own experience growing up is the best classes and the classes I learned the most were my hardest teachers.
Of course.
The ones that pushed me, the ones that I was frustrated with, the ones that I had to do a lot of work, the ones that when I look back on, were the best teachers that I had.
Yeah.
And today, again, when you teach to a test, you know, that's all you're doing. And I remember my youngest when she was graduating. I mean, every time they were having the FCAT, they dreaded. She dreaded it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm not saying you don't have standardized tests. You know, we had those too. You know, aptitude tests, right?
Well, your standardized test is what you do when you get out of school and go get a real job.
That's
that's your test. Now your education begins. But what you learned in school is how do you adapt to these situations and make the most of them.
That's exactly right. And I think, you know, unfortunately today, there's been such a push for everyone to go to college, but college isn't the answer for everybody.
No.
And what we're finding out is pushing so many people into college, then they fail.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, there's a certain segment of the population that has a different skill.
What's wrong with trade schools? I saw a thing the other day with a senator talking about how could we possibly have given, or how could a 26 or 7-year-old, whatever, 29-year-old guy without a college degree get top secret clearance? And I thought, you know, he's not. And the comment was, he's not educational. He doesn't have the education. He's not qualified. And I thought to myself, let's see. Thomas Edison went to school for 3 months.
There you go.
3 months.
Yeah.
And a lot of brilliant people are self-taught, and they go to the library, they read books, they find they're inquisitive minds.
I don't think Bill Gates finished.
He didn't graduate.
He didn't graduate.
No.
So some, especially in the technical area, we've had some almost, you know, you really call them, you know, genius technical experts that have not gone through a formal education process. But you're absolutely right on the vocation, because they've taken those classes out of the public system.
Right, the public system where I came from, that was years ago, we had wood shop, metal shop, automobile shop. They had
and
all
I
these
took
things.
Industrial arts.
Well, good. Yeah. I mean, it's there. You learn how to do stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Home economics.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so we have classes that we've taken out of our school system that might pique the interest of somebody that may not want to go to college, maybe couldn't afford to go to college, but maybe has just a different career in mind. And if we had some of those classes back in our school system, at least it would give them the opportunity.
Well, yes, but if you take a look at the push to put people in college, it's because it's a huge money industry, and it's co-opted by the U.S. government now.
Well, you're absolutely
right. And the colleges are in on the deal too.
Yeah, and it's interesting about tuitions, because tuitions have gone up much greater than the inflation rate. I mean, they've escalated the tuition rates, and it's a circle. It's a vicious circle, because the tuitions get raised, and then the Pell Grants, the taxpayer-funded subsidies, have to go up, and then the loan amounts have to go up. And it's this vicious cycle. But there is some good news recently in the state of Florida.
Let's have it.
Well, Governor Scott he made a statement out there saying he wanted a college education, $10,000.
Right, I remember.
And I believe recently, it may be either Eckerd College or St. Pete College, just came out and said, we think we can do it.
Oh, great.
So, you know, maybe if we let the market work more.
I think that's another issue.
For another day. Free markets do work, even in education, healthcare, and everything else.
I think you're onto something here. Anyway, this is Sharon Calvert, and she's been our guest today on the Central Valley Hornet. We're glad to have Sharon, the lady from the Tampa Bay area who knows a lot, and I think you just found out about that. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Lou. Appreciate it. Woo!
How's that? Good. Yeah, the next one will be cooking.
And you know what? It's funny, because I've been going to my physical therapy in the afternoon, and when I go, they have Rachel Ray on.
Oh.
But you know, she doesn't cook very much on her show anymore.
No, she's a personality.
She's a personality. The last 10 minutes, she gets up and talks about and flips around and does something and shows you the final thing, right?
Yeah.
but she doesn't do. She doesn't do many cooking. You know, she's sitting at a table with a guest now, or just talking.
Yeah. Wow.
I guess that's what happens when you get rich and famous.
Oh, yeah. Well, then you can do what you want.
I know.
It doesn't matter.
And then after